Joining me now is Republican Senator Lamar Alexander of Tennessee. Senator Alexander, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Thank you, Chuck. Good to see you.
Let me start by playing something Dr. Ford said at her testimony about her basic initial fear about coming forward and get you to react to it. Here it is.
I was calculating daily the risk-benefit for me of coming forward and wondering whether I would just be jumping in front of a train that was headed to where it was headed anyway.
That feeling that she was essentially now being mowed down by a freight train.
Yeah. Well, I can't put myself in her shoes, but I can imagine that anyone who believes they were a victim of sexual assault first has that to live with, and second, the difficulty of coming before a public audience, particularly one that large, must be terrifying, as she said. I believe that.
Did you believe her?
I thought she was credible. What
does that mean to you?
What that meant was if listening to her was all I had to do, I would have said she seems to believe what she believes. But that's not all I had to do. For example, this week I went down in the secure place where we could read the FBI reports. I read 6 FBI reports between 1993 and 2018. 150 people interviewed about Judge Kavanaugh. And in every case, the interviewee was asked, do you know of any instance of alcohol abuse? And the answer in every case was no. There was no evidence by any of these people of behavior that had anything to do with sexual impropriety. So you have to consider that. And you also have to consider the fact that the only person who remembers the alleged incident that Dr. Ford describes is Dr. Ford. The other 4 said under penalty of perjury that it either didn't happen or they didn't remember it. So you have to be fair about it. In a very difficult case, you have to consider that as well as her testimony.
What do you think ended up happening? Why is it that you think she remembered it this way? Do you think she just...
I don't know the answer.
She said 100% that she was 100% that it was Brett Kavanaugh.
So did he, but I'm sure that every sexual assault case is usually he said, she said. Except in this case, it's he said, she said, they said. And the they were the witnesses that she said were there, all said it either didn't happen or they didn't remember it, one of whom is one of her best friends.
I want to play for you something one of your colleagues, Senator Murkowski, who she ended up voting no. Here's what she said about this whole situation.
I believe he is a good man. It just may be that in my view, he's not the right man for the court at this time. But I also think that we're at a place where we need to be thinking again about the credibility and the integrity of our institutions.
And this is, I think, the larger concern I think a lot of us are wondering about now. And she also, in her floor speech, talked about the issue of public confidence and the concern that she has that Justice Kavanaugh does not have public confidence.
Well, it'd be hard to have public confidence if you go through a inquisition like he did, arranged by the Democrats. If you go down and read 6 FBI investigations of him over 25 years and see not just the bad things that were not said about him, but the remarkably good things that were said about him, you would be very glad he would be on the Supreme Court, and it would be fundamentally unfair to allow people to make accusations against someone and by simply doing that destroy their reputation and their opportunity to serve in public life.
You know, in the aftermath of this is when then Judge Kavanaugh was defending himself. He himself apparently admits he went over the line in some of the things that he said. It was interesting to hear retired Justice John Paul Stevens react to that. I want to play that sound for you and get you to react. Here he is.
He has demonstrated a potential bias involving enough potential litigants before the court that he would not be able to perform his full responsibilities. And I think there's merit in that criticism.
It's clear to me Judge Kavanaugh was concerned enough about this that he wrote the op-ed. Is that enough? Or does he need to do more?
No, I think that's enough. You know, someone said to me, my answer to that is, if you had a group of people deliberately trying to destroy your reputation with accusations that you know aren't true, and every rumor that comes up about you is the most awful kind of accusation, you're not going to just sit there calmly and take that. You're going to defend yourself against people deliberately trying to damage and destroy you. And I think that's what he did. And I think the fact that he did that is the reason he's on the court. I think if he just sat there and taken it, that people would have been very suspicious. Go back to those FBI investigations over 25 years.
You're saying he was in a box, that if he didn't
but
deny
all
outrageously.
the people who were interviewed over 25 years said his demeanor was excellent. The American Bar Association said his demeanor was excellent. If he's under assault, he fights back.
Talk to me about the United States Senate. You did something very interesting, I thought, 7 years ago, when you said, I'm going to resign from my leadership post, because you said you can't be in leadership and work across the aisle, which was, on one hand, obvious, and on one hand, I thought a bit disconcerting when you admitted that reality. Have things really gotten better in this, in the last 10 years, or have things gotten worse in the United States Senate?
They're worse, but, I look at the Senate like a split-screen television. On one screen this past 3 weeks, you would have seen Kavanaugh, Trump, tweets, etc. On the others, you would have seen 70 senators, half Democrats, half Republicans, passing landmark opioids legislation that affects millions of people. You would have seen record funding for biomedical research, for science, for technology, for supercomputing, the biggest increase for military in 15 years. You've seen a bill to make flying airplanes safer. This is all in the last 3 weeks. So the Senate is doing a pretty good job in its problem-solving capacity.
But the one place it has a problem is judicial nominations. So let me ask you this. Democrats, Chuck Schumer and Dick Durbin said if Democrats get control of the Senate, they would consider restoring the filibuster. I think you were somebody that didn't want to see it go away in the first place. But let me ask you this. If it comes back, will you support keeping it for judicial nominations?
Well, no, wait a minute. We have never had a requirement. The practice has always been that judicial nominations were approved by 51 votes. There's never been a Supreme Court justice who had to get 60 votes, with the exception of Abe Fortas. Even Clarence Thomas was 52 to 48. Chuck Schumer was the one under George W. Bush who insisted that George Bush's nominees get 60 votes.
All right. So obviously,
and I
this
was
is one of these sides. Each side, but
no, it's
do
not
you want
either.
to see?
There never has.
You want to see it restored, though, the 60-vote threshold to end debate, which would force more consensus nominees.
No, not for nominations, because we never had that. Another example, on federal district judges in the history of the United States Senate, no federal district judge has ever been denied his or her seat by a 60-vote requirement. They've all been majority votes. I know because Mitch McConnell wanted to do that once, and I stopped him by getting enough Republicans to do it.
Do you think what's the unintended consequence of a judiciary that is made up of judges that were confirmed 51-49, depending on which part?
Well, if you consider the United States of America as a success, then that's the right way to do it, because ever since we've had a United States Senate with Thomas Jefferson, judges have been approved by 51 votes. Remember, Clarence Thomas was 52 to 48. You could have required 60 votes, but no one ever did.
All right. Senator Alexander, I'm going to leave it there. Appreciate you coming on and sharing your views.
Thank you, Chair.
Good to see you. Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and then click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.